Hello everyone, this is Jake from CINECALIBER. In today's video, we're going to be covering the second episode of the new season of House of the Dragon, which is Season 2. So, this is going to be as the title entails, the second review on the TV series, and if there's any newcomers who want to catch up, please click the link below in the description to see my review on episode 1. Also, this is actually one of my most anticipated shows of the 2024 year. Anyone that wants to see a more detailed analysis of those shows, there will be a second link in the description below that you can click to get to that as well. And without further ado, we're going to get into it here, guys. I'm going to recap some of the events from episode 1 that I found to be significant for this episode. The first thing, the recap, was the death of Lucerys at the end of season 1 left a huge fallback, basically. That was basically the whole, I would guess, theme of the first episode, was just what happened after his death. And it left Queen Rhaenyra grief-stricken, and then it ultimately led to her ordering the death of her nephew, Aemon Targaryen, who had killed Lucerys. This leads Daemon into taking matters into his own hands. And what he does is set an assassination plot in place, which ends with the death of another Targaryen, Jaehaerys, who is actually King Aegon's son. So, and my apologies, just to let everyone know, there will be some slight spoilers in this review. If you guys have not seen this episode, do not watch this, as it will spoil a lot. So, moving forward. Then we also have Alicent Hightower and Sir Criston Cole's affair. We found out that they've been having some sexual transgressions since last episode, and I see that being a huge part of the season moving forward, which I'm going to talk about in the second episode review here. Then we also have certain disagreements between King Aegon and Otto Hightower on how to rule Westeros and handle this war. They kind of touch upon that briefly, but you can kind of sense that there's some kind of conflict between the two. And then really just there was some introduction to some new characters in the last episode. One character named Alan, who was working with Corlys Velaryon and basically fixing his ship. And then another character too that made his presence known to the king and asked for his help in getting money for his blacksmith, and that would be Hugh Hammer, which I will go over more about those characters in the review. So, and without further ado, here is the review for episode 4. We're going to go into a plot summary here. As Team Green, aka the Hightowers, mourn for their recent loss, Team Black, aka Rhaenyra, must face the blowback of Daemon's actions as a civil war between the two families take a new flight that no one will come back from. Okay, guys, we're gonna go into what was a hit with this episode, the good. So let me tell you right off the bat, I mean, this was a big episode, like huge. There was so much exposition to unpack in this episode, and just the tension between the two families is just at a whole, even higher than the first episode. Like I can't fathom it getting higher, but every episode it does, and it's just incredible, and the suspense is just amazing. This wasn't a very explosive war-driven episode. It really goes back to the political aspirations of a lot of characters that make this episode so compelling, and I'm going to go into that here. So really, from the get-go, the first focus of the entire episode is the blowback of the death of Prince Jaehaerys at the end of episode 1. So basically, his father, King Aegon, wants vengeance, and he just goes crazy. Like, you kind of feel for him in this episode a lot because he lost his son, and then even in the first episode, he was trying to do some right, but then Otto was always there to cut him down. So, but I honestly, I see Aegon being like a Joffrey. Like, he isn't a Joffrey yet, but he will become a Joffrey. That is just the feeling I am getting. But that was a huge aspect of this episode. And the performance of King Aegon was impeccable, of course, during this whole time. Like I said, you can really feel the grief he feels for his son. And then another huge part of that whole side of the family, Team Green, is Alicent Hightower and Kristen Cole, they have been having some sexual transgressions, and really, if you think about it, those transgressions most likely caused the distraction that ended in Prince Harry's death. So they both have their own conflicting feelings about it. Allison feels guilty because she distracted the King's Guard, who could have saved Prince Harry's from this awful fate. So she's kind of distanced herself, and you can tell she's just kind of like feeling very guilty. And then the other side of things, you have Sir Kristen Cole, who is just kind of taking it out on people and not actually owning up to his own indiscretions. I mean, the guy is a complete hypocrite. He's a despicable character, and I can't stand the guy. But he uses this to kind of put forth a plot to assassinate Rhaenyra, and he tries to use one of his guards, Sir Eric. Now, Sir Eric is a twin of another Sir Eric. There's Eric with an A and Eric with an E. Ironically, the other Eric is actually one of the Queen's guards for Rhaenyra. So he puts forth a assassination attempt by basically saying, "Hey, why don't you guys just kind of switch, positions, and then slay Queen Rhaenyra," which is actually a pretty ingenious plot. But it's like he's just trying to basically get his stab in because he's feeling even more guilty because of his own, I guess, unloyalty to his knighthood, So, yeah, he gets into like a place of power himself in this episode, which I'll get into here. This was really a bit. That kind of leads into Otto Hightower. This was a huge episode for him. And let me tell you, Rhys Ifans is doing a tremendous job playing this character. He's basically trying to use Prince Jaehaerys in these episodes, like his death, to rally more supporters to their cause. But, and he has some really good ideas, but those ideas are pretty much thwarted by Aegon, who's just out for so much blood. But just like this, there's some things that happen. They put forth a decent plan, but that plan is pretty much squandered by Aegon and his lust for blood, and that ends into a confrontation between the two. That was a very well scripted confrontation, one of the most intense scenes of the episode, just a great moment of dialogue. But yeah, that actually ends up with him losing his position as Hand of the King, and then basically Aegon gives it to Sir Kristen Cole. So now he's just going up the chain of power. It's insane. There's just so many players in this whole game, and I love it. It's just incredible storytelling. And then really too, like the blowback of Prince Jaehaerys, for Rhaenyra. Now she's in this awkward position as word is spread around that she is the one that killed him, but she didn't mean it. She was trying to get to Aemon, but Aemon kind of had other ideas, and that actually ends up in a huge, intense confrontation between those two. I mean, I can't really blame Rhaenyra. She basically can't trust him because she asked him to see something through, and he ended up doing a whole different thing that ends up hurting her cause. And really, you always knew that Daemon was always out for himself, so it's hard to really sympathize with Daemon, especially, like, again, he killed a little kid. Like, it's just not okay. And it just sucks, I mean, the war sucks and everything, but I'm interested to see what's going to happen to Daemon from here, because it seems like they're on a bad note. Is he just going to go off and do his own thing? Is he going to keep fighting for Rhaenyra? There's just a lot of questions that this episode left with that. And other than that, I mean, the immense world building in this episode was just ecstatic. On top of dealing with all that tragedy and the blowback of Prince Jaehaerys, they introduced a lot of new players in this episode. Well, not introduced. So 2 of them were introduced in episode 1, but they're growing them. And then even there's one of them that was in season 1, but I didn't really think much of them until now. So the first one I want to talk about is Hugh Hammer. So Hugh Hammer had come before the king in the last episode asking for money for his blacksmiths to help them basically build the king's weapons for this upcoming war, which Otto was kind of against. But there's a scene with him and his wife, and it looks like his daughter who is sick with some kind of illness, and they're kind of just talking about the rough times they have. Like, hey, we can't afford food, it's getting crazy out there. I'm interested to see what is going to happen with that. So Hugh Hammer is actually a huge character in the books, and his character is big, basically fighting for Rhaenyra. But the show has kind of written him differently. So I think, like I said, they don't show a character in this show unless they're going to have some kind of an impact. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with this character. But being that there was only one scene, it was like, who is this guy? And it's like, this is who he is. And I have a feeling he's going to be a big player in episodes to come. Then another scene is with Alan. Alan was shown with Corlys in the last episode. I had a feeling this guy's going to be big, or he's going to be a big part, and sure enough, they kind of go into him a little bit. It looks like he has a brother, Adam, who kind of has his own power aspirations, and is kind of like, hey, you really should be having Corlys owe you a favor because you saved his life, and he wants his brother, Alan, to basically, come on, man, let's do something here, let's get ahead, and Alan's a little hesitant, so we'll see where that's going to go, what's going to play out, but I have some feelings about that as well. And the other character was Mysaria. Now, Mysaria was basically Daemon's, I guess, love affair, so to call it, in season 1, and she did commit some actions for him in season 1 throughout the season. And here, she was actually a big part of the assassination attempt that Daemon had conducted, and now she's being confronted by Queen Rhaenyra for her part in this assassination. And really, I have a feeling that even though this episode feels like she's trying to get away, they're gonna make her a huge asset for Rhaenyra. And she actually, there's a scene where she's kind of just walking and trying to get out, and then she ultimately ends up saving Rhaenyra's life. I'm not gonna get into that here. She saves her life because she sees one of the Eric brothers, but then she's like, well, wait a minute, the one Eric brothers escorting me to freedom, so how is that possible? And that ends into a pretty intense sequence, and which ends with the two brothers basically confronting each other towards the end of the episode. And let me tell you, that whole sequence was like, oh my god, it was suspenseful. From the moment that the the wrong Eric brother was going up the steps to get to Rhaenyra, and then just there's a huge battle, and it ends in a pretty tragic moment. So, but that was probably that was a really good fight scene, So I enjoyed that immensely, and again, the tension is continuing to build for these two families. War is inevitable, that is for sure. And the only other character I wanted to talk about was Aemond. So Aemond, they show him a little bit in this episode, but he has just guilt for killing Viserys. And I like that the show is trying to kind of personify him, because I feel like everyone's labeling him as this bad person because he just carelessly killed Luke. But you could tell he really feels remorse for his actions, but you could also tell you can tell that he likes to be this crazy fighter, and he kind of reminds me of a younger version of Daemon, in which I really hope that those two end up fighting, because it will be a battle to witness. But that was everything that was a hit for me in this show, and then we're going to go into what was a miss, the bad. Honestly, guys, I don't really have anything. There really wasn't much bad in this episode. The only thing I would say is that I hope the kids, like Rhaenyra's kids, Alicent's kids, I hope they have a little bit more screen time. They show Helena a lot, but I really hope they don't just write them off as just minor characters. They have a scene with Jace and Bela, but they're not very little. But I hope that they continue to grow those characters. That don't forget about them. I think that they are going to be a huge aspect of this. So. And then we're going to go into the conclusion. So guys, this was by far one of the best episodes of the season and the series so far. I really loved it. It has really heavy exposition. The explorations to the politics of the throne is a return to form for the show, in my opinion. The immense character and world building, remains a spectacle as well, and of course, the performance of all these characters helped make these characters so alive and relatable. And despite there not being any true war yet, I mean, this episode really shows that some of the best that Game of Thrones has to offer is simply just political maneuvers of the cast of the show. Like, I find that really the best parts of this show is the political part. I like the war, but that's just the surface level. The political aspect is so deep, and I think the show does a tremendous job. And I'm very excited to see where we're gonna go. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the episode. If you guys have seen the episode, you can please comment on what your thoughts and feelings were. And of course, as always, anyone on here, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we will be back for the next episode. And that is it for today. And this is Jake from CINECALIBER.